They said the Oba's foot never falls without reason. When the drums hush and his sandal touches the earth, destinies shift, hearts break, and deaths are born. But on that fateful afternoon, in Òrun kingdom, when the market still smelled of roasted maize and palm sugar, the Oba's foot did not fall on a soldier's back or a thief's neck. It fell upon a girl's shoulder. And that was how the story of Abeni, the girl the king's foot chose, began. A tale whispered by griots, sung by river winds, and carried across generations until it reached the ears of another woman. A woman who refused. The sun hung low above Òrun, spilling molten gold across the rust-red roofs of the old market. The air shimmered with heat and laughter, a living rhythm that pulsed through the town like a heartbeat. Women's voices rose and fell like waves, haggling, teasing, blessing. The metallic clang of cowbells from wandering goats blended with the hollow thud of pestles pounding yam. Children darted between stalls with dust-caked feet, their giggles trailing behind like wind chimes. The scent of fried bean cakes, roasted plantain, and melting palm sugar wrapped the whole square in a sweet, dizzy spell. At the heart of it all sat Abeni, young, radiant, and full of unguarded joy. Her eyes sparkled like dew kissed by dawn, and her laughter, that laughter, had the power to soften even the hardest heart. She wore a wrapper the color of sunset hibiscus, her head tie tilted just enough to show her playful spirit. Before her were bowls of crimson hibiscus, petals, and amber palm sugar, glistening under the sun. She didn't sell riches, she sold comfort, a little sweetness for weary souls. And when she called out to passers-by, her voice carried like music over the noise.
Hey, Caro, good morning, my mothers. Buy my sugar, life is sweeter when you share.
A few women turned, smiling despite themselves. An old man paused, mid-step, just to listen. It wasn't merely what she sold, it was the warmth behind her words. Even the winner seemed to linger a little longer near a stall, as if it too wanted to buy a taste of joy. But that day, the rhythm of her life was about to change, for it was the festival of the golden drum. The morning sun had risen like a burning crown over Òrun, and the whole kingdom pulsed with excitement. The day the Oba himself would bless the earth, speak to the ancestors, and renew the covenant between the living and the spirit world. The air shimmered like heat over fire. Palm fronds swayed. Smoke from 100 incense pots curled toward the heavens. The scent of alligator pepper and camwood oil mingled with the sweetness of roasted maize. Drummers lined the square, their bare chests gleaming with sweat and dust as their hands beat out ancient rhythms. Dum, dum, tak, dum, dum, tak. Palace guards, tall and silent, moved like living shadows through the crowd, their spears catching the sunlight in brief, dangerous flashes. People pushed, whispered, bowed. Even the goats bleated softer, as though they too knew a sacred moment was near. Then it happened, a sudden hush, the kind that falls before a storm. The crowd parted, and from the palace gates came the royal procession. First, the praise singers, their voices ringing like bronze bells. Gbèsè, the Lion of Òrun walks among men. Behind them, dancers twirled, their cowries and beads clattering like rainfall. And then, the royal parasol, wide and brilliant, shimmered under the sun like captured lightning. And beneath it, the Oba of Ile Òrun. His robe was woven in deep indigo and bright gold, threads glinting like river water. Coral beads circled his neck and wrists, glowing red as sunset fire. His gaze, calm, heavy, eternal, seemed to carry the memory of all his ancestors. He moved slowly, majestically, each step measured like the ticking of time itself. Children hid behind their mothers. Women lowered their heads, whispering prayers. Even the wind dared not move. And yet, in that stillness, one sound broke through, a soft gasp, the delicate flutter of hibiscus petals hitting the ground. Abeni, lost in her own thoughts, had dropped her basket. The petals scattered across the dusty road like a trail of red tears, and one drifted to rest against the Oba's foot. He paused. The drums faltered, then stopped. The world seemed to fold in on itself. Slowly, he turned his gaze toward her. Their eyes met, hers wide with confusion, his deep with something unspoken. Then, with a motion, both gentle and divine, he stepped closer and placed his right foot upon her shoulder. Gasps tore through the air. Drums silenced. Even the birds froze mid-flight. Then came the voice of the chief priest, rising above the thunderous heartbeat of the crowd. Ancient, echoing, undeniable. Gbèsè, the foot has fallen. The king has chosen. A roar of astonishment rippled through the market. Women clapped their hands and wailed in disbelief. Men bowed their heads, murmuring the old saying, once the royal foot touches, destiny begins its dance. Abeni's breath caught in her throat. Her world blurred. The dust, the drums, the faces, all faded into a dizzy haze. Was this an honor or a curse? A blessing from the gods, or a trap of fate? She didn't know. All she knew was that her life, once as simple as hibiscus and sugar, was no longer her own. The palace of Ile Òrun rose high above the town, like a mountain made of coral and smoke. Its walls shone in the sunlight, and drums echoed through its halls like distant thunder. Inside, Abeni's life was no longer her own. Servants moved around her like waves, bathing her in water that smelled of jasmine and camwood, rubbing her dark skin until it glowed with palm oil. They dressed her in a thick azuoke cloth woven with shining silver threads. Her hair was braided neatly, each strand decorated with tiny cowries that clicked softly when she moved. Her wrists and ankles carried beads that jingled like secret music. When they were done, the palace women bowed and called her Ayaba Abeni, the chosen queen. But inside, Abeni didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a small bird trapped inside a golden cage. Beautiful, admired, but not free. By day, the palace glittered like a dream, full of laughter, colors, and praise songs. But at night, it changed. The halls grew quiet. Torches flickered like frightened stars. Whispers floated through the air. Soft, sneaky, dangerous. Every step Abeni took echoed against the marble floors, reminding her that she was never truly alone. Every smile she received from the palace women seemed too sweet, like honey hiding a sting. Among the wiles of the Oba was Queen Adesewa, First wife, powerful, proud, and as beautiful as she was cunning. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, and her eyes shone sharp and cold like wet stones after rain. Whenever Abeni passed, Adesewa watched her, smiling slowly, but her smile never reached her eyes.
So this is the sugar girl that stole the king's gaze. You shine now, little one. But remember, even sunlight fades beneath palace roofs.
Days turned to weeks. She learned to kneel before the oracle, to serve palm wine in the right hand, to smile when her heart wanted to scream. One night, the palace oracle summoned her. He was an old man with white chalk across his face and a voice that crackled like firewood. He opened a wooden ledger, filled not with ink, but with cowries, hundreds of them, each symbolizing a woman chosen by the king. Child, do you know what Gbèsè means? Debt, Baba. Yes, to owe. Once the foot falls, your spirit owes the throne. You owe obedience, silence, and sacrifice. Remember that, Ayaba. He dropped a single cowrie into her palm. It was cracked, just like her freedom. That night, as she stared at the moonlight spilling through her window, she whispered to herself,
Debt or not, my heart was never borrowed.
Outside the tall palace walls, Ola the hunter stood under the burning sun. His clothes were dusty, his eyes full of fire and pain. This was the man who once promised Abeni a small hut, warm laughter, and a simple life filled with love, before fate took her away. He ran to the palace gate and shouted until his voice cracked, Abeni, Abeni. The king cannot buy what was freely given. Come back to me. His voice echoed through the courtyard like thunder before rain. People gathered, whispering, afraid to breathe too loud. Then the guards came, tall, hard-faced men in bronze helmets. Silence, hunter, one barked. But Ola would not stop. He shouted again, tears and dust on his face. She was mine before the crown took her. That was his last cry. The guards struck him down. The sound of the blow rang out, dull and final. Ola's body fell to the ground, and his blood darkened the dust at the palace gate. Inside, Abeni heard it. That voice, his voice, breaking against the wind. Her heart froze. She dropped to her knees, the heavy beads on her wrists clinking like chains. Tears rolled down her cheeks, falling into the scent of burning incense. And in that moment, she understood. The word Gbèsè, the sacred debt, was no longer just a word. It was her life. A debt that eats away love, piece by piece, until nothing remains but sorrow.